Hi, my name is Matt Miskel, and we're going to talk about cystic fibrosis today. By the end of this lesson, students will be able to construct a model that represents the effect that a mutated gene has on the human body, distinguish between two or more mutations that result in the same symptoms of a disease, and analyze the etiology of a genetic disorder and modify the identified mutation so as to reverse the phenotype to normal. Okay, so in recap, we have talked about the human body system. Specifically, we've talked about how in a lot of our organs, we have this inner mucosal membrane that helps with the immune system, captures foreign substances, provide a barrier. So today, specifically, I want to focus in on the airway mucus. Okay. And what if I told you that the airway mucus, right, the mucus on the inside of your bronchi and your bronchioles, instead of it being watery and thin and clear, instead, some people have mucus that is thick and sticky, think like honey. Considering all that we've learned with the body systems, and considering what I just told you, that some people have really thick mucus on the inside of their lungs, I want you to pause the video and I want you to write down what complications or symptoms do you think would come about if the mucus in the airway was as thick as honey and the lumen itself was narrowed? Okay, so hopefully you paused the video and you considered if the inside mucus of your lungs was as thick as honey, what symptoms could that cause? I wrote down a few. If the inner lining of your lungs was comprised of really thick mucus, then patients, they are going to be coughing. They're going to be coughing up mucus, right? The immune system response that the mucus facilitates to capture foreign substances and do away with them, that's not going to function properly. So you're going to have lung infections. Okay. The inner lumen, where the air travels through, that area will be narrowed because the mucus will be thicker and thicker and thicker. And so you're going to have labored breathing. It's going to be tough to breathe. And about 40,000 people in the US suffer from this. So our next most logical, most pressing question is why? Why is the mucous membrane abnormally thick in about 40,000 people in the US? Think of honey. Couldn't we just make honey thick mucus thinner by just adding water? Well, that should lead us to our next question, right? Why do 40,000 people in the US not have enough water mixing with the mucus inside their airway to keep it thin? And to answer that question, we've got to go back to what we learned about osmosis. Do you remember this? That water flows in the direction toward more concentration of solutes to keep the ratio of water and solutes even? So then that changes our question. Why do about 40,000 people in the US not have enough solutes inside the airway so that the water will flow in order to keep the mucus thin? Here's a pretty good picture. So here's your airway. Okay. So here's where the mucus builds up. Here's our solutes. Our chlorides, our solutes are going to be chloride. And what we know we need is for chloride to cross the cell membrane into where the mucus will build up so that water will follow, mix with the mucus, and keep it thin. Now notice how this happens. This protein right here, this is called your cystic fibrosis transmembrane conductance regulator, or CFTR. This channel, this chloride channel, allows chloride to go across into where the mucus will be so that water will flow over and keep it thin. What I want you to do now, considering this scene, this chloride channel scene, I want you to pause the video and I want you to draw what you think this cell membrane scene would look like in someone that has cystic fibrosis. Okay, so hopefully you paused the video and you attempted to draw what you think this scene right here would look like in somebody who has cystic fibrosis, somebody who has really thick mucus on the inner bronchi. Here's a pretty good picture of it. Okay, here's your really thick mucus, see up here. Here's our chloride that isn't going across, so it's not attracting water across to mix with the mucus to make it thinner. Why isn't it doing that? Because this channel is closed. Maybe you drew this. Maybe you drew the CFTR protein is messed up in some way. It's a different shape. Maybe you drew that it closed. Maybe you drew that there wasn't even a channel in the first place, that there's just a cell membrane, that it's absent. So that leads us to our next question. Why do about 40,000 people in the US have a mutated CFTR channel? And we got to go all the way to genetics. Now, there's a lot going on here. This is the same exact picture we've been looking at, okay? Over here on the right, this is where the mucus builds up. This is the inside of your bronchi. Here's your cell membrane. Here's that CFTR channel. And so if we back up and see how it's made, okay, it's from our DNA, specifically from chromosome 7. You have the CFTR gene, which is transcribed from your DNA by RNA. It's copied by RNA. And then any of the single strand of the RNA that is not used to make the CFTR protein is spliced out. So now you have messenger RNA for CFTR protein. Okay, it's carried over into the endoplasmic reticulum. With the help of the ribosomes, it is translated into the CFTR protein. So now this protein is building, okay, carried over into the Golgi apparatus, which then it brings on sugars in order to complete the processing, and attaches to the cell membrane so that our chloride inside our cell can appropriately go across the CFTR protein channel into our bronchi to then attract water that will mix with the mucus to keep it thin. So how does this mess up? There are a lot of ways it messes up. One specific way I want us to focus on is this class 2 mutation, F508 delta. Let's look at this. On chromosome 7, we have the CFTR gene that's copied to mRNA. And here's where this mutation messes up. It's carried over here and it attempts to fold it appropriately to create the protein, and it does not. So with a class 2 mutation, it never forms a CFTR protein, never makes it to the cell membrane. Okay, another good picture. Here's our F508 delta mutation. It never makes it to the cell membrane, but I want you to take a look. There's many other types of mutations that leads to an abnormal CFTR protein. This one, channel gate does not open, so the chloride will not flow across. Okay, with these mutations, not enough CFTR along the cell membrane, right? So you're not going to facilitate that water flow as much if you don't have enough CFTR channels. Now, why would somebody have a mutated CFTR channel in the first place from the DNA? Well, if you think all the way back to 7th grade and Punnett squares, why does anybody get anything in genetics? Well, it's from their parents. Okay, and the CFTR mutation, it takes both because it is recessive. So both parents need to pass on this mutation in order for a person to have this CFTR abnormality. And so our most pressing question of this entire lesson is, of course, how do we help people with this? Okay, knowing what we know, right? This is the same exact image that we just looked at, right? Knowing what we know, there's different stages of how the CFTR protein can abnormally form. And so we have treatment that treat the translation errors. We have treatment that treats post-translation modification, helps it process through the Golgi apparatus. Okay, and we have treatment called potentiators that helps the CFTR protein that did make it function properly. So I'm going to leave you with this last question, okay? We talked about lungs, but cystic fibrosis is systemic. What other body structures do you think are impacted by a mutated CFTR, and what symptoms do you think someone could show due to this? Thank you.